really glad that you brought up that point, because oftentimes we live our lives, especially as teachers, in a silo, right? We don't think about how our actions are affecting other people or how other people's actions are affecting us. We don't necessarily talk about life in a democratic society. I just had this conversation with my students last night in my graduate class. So, is my job to teach students how to interact in a democratic society and the moral repercussions of our actions, or is my this was a question, or is my job to teach the curriculum and how to pass a test and really be done with it? Well, I'm sure you've heard teaching is a very political act, because every single decision you make as an educator has a repercussion, makes a ripple. So, do you want your students to think of you as that teacher? You go in their classroom, you learn the content, and you leave? Or do you want your student, and this is completely up to you. I'm not presenting it in a positive or negative light. Or do you want your student to come away from your class each day thinking, how can I apply that in the world? How can I apply what I learned today in the world? Or how can I go to my next class and fill in a bubble sheet? Because that's where our society is heading in the form of standardization. I mean, we have a crisis, people. We have a lot of people in this country who do not care how the person on the corner gets along. But living in a democratic society where we have a social obligation to one another, to support one another, that's our social obligation living here. To recognize the importance of the other person and how that person survives. And engaging students in service projects engenders that sense of community and need to help and to understand. Not to save them, but to understand. It does build empathy, which is something that's kind of disappearing. Oh, I can sympathize. I completely sympathize with that. I feel really sorry for that person sleeping on that cardboard box over there under the bridge on Tryon. But I got a home to go to. It does. Well, what if you were to go down there and talk to that person and find out about their life and how they got to this point? That builds empathy. One bad sickness, we could be there. One car accident, we could be there. One of a 2-person income goes away, we could be there. Most of us wouldn't be, because we have what? Support systems. What are we developing through service learning? Support systems. What would you have in your classroom if you reached outside of your classroom into the community? Support. So that's what this is, and I'm so glad you made that point, because it really is about developing community and being a different kind of teacher. And it's not easy, and I'm not pretending it's easy. It's hard work, and some people might think you're crazy for taking on such an endeavor. But it really will help your students understand their role in a democratic society as a person who is responsible for that person sitting beside them. I mean, it's really like saying, Toria, if Nina were to fall on the floor right now, what would you do? Would you stand there and look at her, or would you resuscitate her or pick her up or call 911? It's really a matter of thinking in that manner. Right. And it is a skill builder as well. I mean, the amount or the types of skills that you develop in learning how to deal with community agencies as a 4th grader is invaluable. I mean, talking to adults, writing a letter to your congressperson, learning how to read the ingredients or how to bake something to take to a family in need or something like that. Just it's small, but you can think about the skills that your students will be developing. And I'm trying to think from pre-K all the way up to high school here with these activities. They don't have to be huge service projects. They can be very simple. Um, and so you can engage, your pre-K kids and your seniors in thinking this way. Here's just, a quick, in order to develop service learning courses or projects or curriculum, you have to think about both sides. Three people. You have to think about yourself as the instructor. How much work are you willing to do? You have to think about your students, like how will they benefit? And you have to think about the community partner, the agency. Are you imposing on them, or are you asking from them? Are you learning from them, or are you pushing your agenda onto them? You have to think about all of that. And in order to develop strong, mutually beneficial partnerships, it takes time. It takes surveying them about what they want and how their needs are changing. I've worked with the same school on the project, the middle school that I've talked to you about, for 3 years. This past year I had to take off because I was out on leave. But I start at the beginning of the end of the summer. I give them a couple months of a break from me, and then I come back and I say, all right, what do you need this year? And we work all fall to determine what we need for, as they're learning about their students in the fall, we determine those needs. And then I go in January and we work with their students. And then we have this culminating project. And for 2 years, the culminating project was just bringing these kids to campus so that they could see what a college campus looks like. That was the need that the teacher identified, to have them thinking about higher learning. That was easy. That was a really easy project. But think of the skills that it developed in my own students. And not just the skills, but the understandings. These kids want to go to college. Not a single one of them didn't have college in their future, in their heads. These kids, those poverty-stricken kids, those low reading ability kids, those high-risk kids, as they're seeing it, those bad kids that we see, on the news, that school always has discipline problems. They all wanted to go to college. And for a person who's getting ready to become a teacher to recognize that all of those kids wanted to go to college was a big deal. To find out what their needs are, prepare the students with information about community partners prior to beginning the service. There is kind of a tightrope you have to walk there. You want to give them the information, but you don't want to bias them. You want them to have their own, kind of build their own perspectives. Communicate often with the community partner. Talk to them. Like I said, I was on maternity leave the whole spring semester, but I communicated with the community partner about once a week to find out how she was doing and how her students were doing, and tell her how much I missed her and their school, because I wanted her to understand the importance that school has in my heart, and I wanted to hear what she had going on this year. Have community partner to evaluate students' participation and vice versa. Don't just be the person to give the students the grade. Ask the community partner to evaluate the students. Conduct a program evaluation within 3 years of partnership development. This is my line of research. I do service learning research for my career. And it's very important to do a partnership evaluation. Because if you're doing the same boring, monotonous stuff over and over and over again, there's no growth. There's no improvement. And there's no reason to have a partnership if it's not mutually beneficial. So conduct a program analysis. I mean, you may not have to wait 3 years if you're with this community partner for a year. You might want to evaluate it for the next school year. And there are resources out there if you want to conduct a program evaluation, and I can point you in that direction. Challenging students to develop cultural competence through service learning courses. You need to make explicit the relationship between the community partner and the need for such an organization. Always have students reflect on experience and then use as a foundation for class discussion. Select texts and reading that might challenge the students' understanding of the world. Select your readings very carefully. Have students work with a community partner to establish a need to mutually develop a service project. Remember, don't go in there and tell them what you're going to do. Ask them what they need you to do. And here are some recommended texts for incorporating planning with service learning. Again, I will upload this to the Dropbox so you can have this list. The one that I really want to point you to is Kids as Planners, a guide to strengthening students, schools, and communities through service learning. Give kids the power to plan their service project. This is a guide for kids to learn how to do it. If you're working with older readers, older kids, the complete guide to service learning, kids can read about what the theory of service learning is while they're also reading about the content that you're teaching in your course. And it's Our World 2, young people who are making a difference, how they do it and how you can too. And Learning Through Serving, a student guidebook for service learning across discipline. Both of these texts present stories about students making changes in the world on a very small scale. And I think one of the stories was from It's Our World 2, was a story about a young Latino male in California who, with his football team, who was majority Latino, decided that they were sick and tired of every time they would drop the ball or whatever, the white members of the crowd would yell derogatory terms at them. But when a white member of the football team dropped the ball or made a mistake, they would say, "It's okay, you'll get it next time." So they decided they were going to boycott the football team, quit the football team, until somebody said something to these adults who were calling them derogatory racist names. So he goes to the school board. They're not interested. They're the ones sitting in the audience yelling and screaming these derogatory terms. So it recruits the help of his student body president, who's a white kid who's really angry about this as well. And they work together to make change within their community. So that's just one example of, how service learning can make small changes. You can make small changes at a very local level to enact change at a more global level. So these are recommended texts for you if you're interested in participating in service learning or engaging your students in service learning. And then here are some more researchy things: the history of service learning, and why teachers benefit from engaging their students in service learning. So not just your students, but also you as a teacher, how your practice can be made stronger. And that's the end of that. What I wanted you to think about now is, how might you engage your students within your content or grade level in a service project based on your content? So I know this is our pre-K Head Start program area. Elementary, high school, hybrid. Okay, me too. It's a daily battle, I know. Pre-K, high school, elementary, high school, middle. All right. So your specific grade level. So we have middle people, raise your hands. Just you. Okay. Elementary people, raise your hands. High school people, raise your hands. And pre-K, Head Start, raise your hands. Okay. So what I would like for you to do, we have about 25 minutes before we're going to take a break. What I would like for you to do, because elementary you teach everything, and middle grades you teach half of everything, pretty much. What do you teach? You just teach one subject, so you can meet with the high school folks. Okay. So if the elementary folks would get together, the high school folks would get together, and the pre-K folks would get together, and we're just going to brainstorm. We're going to brainstorm, and you're going to contribute to the list of the greater group. But think about first, and I'm going to write this on the board. I have to raise the screen. Think about first, what do you know about the area in which you live? Teach, sorry. What do you know about the area in which you teach? What's located nearby? What are the organizations that you might be able to tap into? Second, how might that relate to your content? And that's all I want you to think about, because that's hard enough to think about. So first, I can put it right here, actually. Can I? Okay. Right, and it also kind of facilitates an interest. I am so sorry, but math was not my thing. But had I gone out and learned how to problem solve while maybe building a house, like for Habitat for Humanity or something, and how those angles work with the tools that I would be using, I might have had a greater interest in math, right? And then maybe if I didn't like English language arts, maybe if I was able to participate in a political campaign or was able to write up instructions for someone on how to, I don't know, take the bus or make some kind of dish or something like that, I might have gained a little bit of interest if I was able to use that in an authentic way. So you're right. Service learning makes learning important, makes learning more authentic. We've heard of, I mean, you can lump service learning in, if you please, with authentic learning, experiential education. In fact, through the American Educational Research Association, service learning and experiential education are together. That they're part of the same interest group. Okay, so what I want you to do is, one, I want you to brainstorm. What's in your area? What does the area around your school look like? Who might benefit from your students working with them? How many of you, does anybody teach in this area over here off Tryon Street? You do. Did you know that there's a community bike recyclery over there? You know how many people don't know that? Most people don't know that there's a community bike recyclery. And do you know how that works? What's a community bike recyclery? Anybody? You take your old bike over there, right? And now I don't know how this one works, but the ones that I've worked with in the past, you take your old bike over there. A group of people will refurbish that bike and either give or sell that bike for a very small price to someone who needs that bike. How does that meet the need in the community? Transportation, because a lot of people ride bikes, especially in that area, right? So in Carrboro, North Carolina, there's a bike recyclery. All you have to do to get a new bike is to go spend time building your bike and learning the skill of building a bike, and then spend only 3 more hours working on someone else's bike, and you can have that bike for free. So how might working with a bike recyclery for middle grades or high school students, I don't know how pre-K students can work with a bike recyclery, but it's possible, help them to better understand what would working with a bike recyclery help middle grades and high school students understand? What are some areas, content areas? Very good. That's a great lesson for econ and civics, for environmental science. What else? So, math. What about a course on social studies and the demographics of an area and the need for cheap transportation? I mean, look outside of here. We have the new bicycle program through the city. So it's being supported because there's bike lanes being put everywhere in the city now, thank goodness. So how does that work with city planning? Like that. So you can think of just about any content area that a service project with a bicycle recyclery, which has nothing to do with a school classroom, how they might be in a good relationship, a mutually beneficial relationship. Okay, so I want you to brainstorm what's in your area. And then I want you to just like what we just did, relate it to curriculum. So if each person came up with one resource in your area, and then you all related it to the curriculum, you would probably get, based on the groups, about 4 different examples of ways that you could start conceptualizing what service learning might look like. I said it wasn't easy, and it's not. There's a lot more leaps that have to be made in preparation. But those texts that I shared with you, service learning, like guidebooks, how you do it, because first of all, there's no one right way to do it the first time, because you're going to screw it up the first time. It's going to be a mess. But you can get better at it.